While the unsealing and counting of ballots is a significant step forward, these hair and makeup artists now await a final decision from the NLRB regarding their eligibility for unionization in the first place.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
So, Adam, we've got some news coming out of Atlanta from your union, right?
My IATSE sisters in Atlanta at the Opera House there have actually been locked in a pretty bitter struggle, and I wanted to share it with you folks this morning to kind of lift up this struggle and share what's happening there. So the Atlanta Opera continues to block their hair and makeup crews access to health care and retaliate against them by slashing wages, all because they sought the dignity and respect of a union. In the summer of 2021, the 100% black hair and makeup crew at the Atlanta Opera voted to join IATSE Local 798. The hope of the workers was that once a majority voted to form a union, they could collectively bargain a contract providing the employees with health insurance and retirement benefits, similar to what the musicians, stagehands, and costume and wardrobe workers who work under a union contract already have. But what the Atlanta Opera did is callous. In a cynical attempt to deny hair and makeup artists the benefits of a union, the Atlanta Opera tried to prevent workers from voting by arguing that they are independent contractors rather than employees, and that they don't have the right to unionize or to seek better terms for their employment. However, thankfully, the Atlanta Opera has lost that argument. The election was then held, but before the votes could be counted, the Atlanta Opera appealed to the National Labor Relations Board, the NLRB, in Washington, D.C., to try once again to claim that the workers were not employees. By doing so, Atlanta Opera management caused ballots cast by the crew to be impounded while the NLRB considers if these workers are even employees once again. To make matters worse, the Atlanta Opera retaliated against the crew by degrading their pay and conditions, effectively denying them work at future performances, despite the fact that the venue received over $1.6 million in taxpayer funds through federal PPP loans. Atlanta Opera hair and makeup artists need your support. Join them in telling management to respect their workers by giving them equitable treatment and counting their votes. I'll drop a link to the petition in the chat, but just this past week or so, on March 21st, we had a press release from the International, from IATSE, where there was an announcement that the NLRB had actually unsealed and counted the ballots. They had been impounded for nearly 2 years, but on Tuesday, the 21st, they were counted, and the results revealed that the Atlanta Opera hair and makeup artists unanimously supported joining together under IATSE Local 798. According to President Matthew D. Loeb, the international president of IATSE, he said, quote, "Today's count reaffirms what we already knew. The workers have spoken in a free and fair election, and they want a union. The Atlanta Opera's retaliatory behavior and continued legal games up to this point are an affront to democracy and to the values their institution supposedly embodies. Every worker in entertainment who wants a union deserves one. We are not leaving anyone behind the scenes behind." The unit of hair and makeup workers who requested union representation, like I said, is fully comprised of black artists. And these union-busting tactics from the Atlanta Opera are being taken to prevent these workers from exercising their rights. A March 2022 Actors Equity Statement explains, quote, "What is far more shameful is that the Atlanta Opera has denied a group of all black artists their right to organize. These employers have not only refused to acknowledge the bargaining unit's legitimacy, but retaliated against them. Such actions contradict the work of Atlanta Opera's own EDI task force, which vows to counteract bias, increase diversity, and foster an inclusive climate." All right, I'm going to pause right here because I think that's interesting that we were just mentioning DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, in the context of Madison, Alabama. And as we mentioned, many corporations and institutions have adopted these sorts of policies, primarily, administered through their human resources department, it's something they can check off a list. They can throw this out there every time they get an EEOC complaint. And here's the Atlanta Opera. They have their own task force supposed to counteract bias, increase diversity, and foster an inclusive climate. Well, how the hell is union busting against a bunch of black women increase diversity or foster an inclusive climate? Would love to know the answer to that from Atlanta Opera's management. In spring 2021, employees who performed the art of hairstyling and makeup at the Atlanta Opera sought the opportunity to vote, and they secured an election through the NLRB. But it was this continued legal maneuvering from the opera that has dragged this out for over 2 years now, right? They're trying the misclassification argument, and that's something that has been used against workers all over this country, where there are workers who should be considered employees but are misclassified as independent contractors. And that is a tried and true method to exploit folks and to deny folks their rights. So, despite the fact that the ballots were counted, it is not over yet. While the unsealing and counting of ballots is a significant step forward, these hair and makeup artists now await a final decision from the NLRB regarding their eligibility for unionization in the first place. So, despite the unanimous support, it's still up in the air as to whether or not these folks will get the union that they deserve. There is a petition, as I mentioned. I'll drop a link to that in the chat for you to share and to sign. I did get just yesterday a brief update that the opera has now decided to negotiate. No word yet on what that's going to look like, or where things stand with that, but I did get an update from one of the sisters out there that it looked like the opera now was willing to meet with them. So, fingers crossed that things are about to work out there, but just real shameful behavior from the Atlanta Opera. And I want to send our love and solidarity to these sisters out there doing very important work, and they deserve a union. They deserve health care. They deserve a living wage. It's not unreasonable. And especially in a institution that proclaims itself to be working on diversity and equity and inclusion. Come on now. That is the sort of hollowness behind so many of these policies that makes it all the more laughable that, we're supposed to believe it's some sort of vast conspiracy. No, it's just human resources. So sending our love to the sisters at the Atlanta Opera. I did reach out to an organizer in the area, and I'm working on trying to get an interview set up with a couple of these folks. I think it would be great to hear their story, and definitely wishing them all the best, and hope they get that union. I hope they get that contract that they deserve.
You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.